Good evening, everyone.
How are you today?
All right, how you doing, Lieutenant?
Good evening.
I have no complaints.
Hey, Miss Kiana, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Yourself, sir?
Oh, just trying to battle off a cold and just
As
trying to
you
tell
should.
it every night, hydrating like you're not gonna get me, you're not gonna get me. So, uh, yeah, but I think just wrapping up a long day today, I'm starting to feel it a little bit. But other than that, I'm doing all right. Good to see everyone.
Nice to see you as well.
Give it a couple minutes. Texting Commissioner Jackson. She should be joining us any second now as well. Welcome, Angelica. See you in the audience, in attendance. We're going to be giving folks a couple more minutes to join. We'll be starting shortly. Thank you for your patience.
Hello there, everyone.
Hey, good evening.
Good evening.
Evening. Kiana, we gonna see your beautiful face or no?
Unfortunately not. My Wi-Fi has been giving me trouble, and so I have been opting to just
Yeah,
go
yeah,
focus.
yeah.
I
Okay.
know, I know.
Okay, well, will you at least introduce yourself as we start getting more and more people to join the meeting?
Yes, ma'am. So my name is Kiana Gums, Director of Communications and Engagement for the Office of the Inspector General. Happy to be here.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And we're also expecting Charlotte, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Can you text her and make sure she's gonna join in a timely fashion? Because we get right to it.
Yes, ma'am. Will do.
Thank you. And then I'll reach out to Reggie Lyles. And I don't know if Chair Peterson is going to join us. She's on a little bit of a vacation, which has not really been much of a vacation because we've been talking.
Okay, so I did just receive a Teams message from Chief Jones, and she noted that she may be 30 minutes late. She was involved in, or there was an accident on the freeway, and so she will have to until she arrives home.
Okay, appreciate it. Didn't want to hear that, but appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am, and I will do my best to fill in and represent the office in her place.
Okay, I knew she was going to. Hey there, Deacon Lyles.
Sorry for being late. I'm sorry.
You're good. You're good. Kiana Gums is the Director of Communications on behalf of the IG's office. However, we were supposed to have an overview from her number two, from Michelle's number two, who now says she's going to be 30 minutes late. So that kind of, I won't say that jacks us up. I wanted to hear from her earlier. I'm going to go back to the minutes and the agenda. Anybody got any interesting news to report before we jump right in? Okay, nothing's going on. Lieutenant Hubbard, you know, we didn't get an invite to meet the new police chief. Did you go to the reception? Or whatever that introduction was?
I was not there. No, I didn't get the invite, but I was off sick last week, so I
What?
haven't had the pleasure of meeting him.
Are you feeling better?
I am. I had a respiratory infection, so I'm feeling much better. So thank you for asking.
Absolutely. Those are horrible, and you know they can return. So baby yourself a little bit. I know that's kind of hard to say to a police officer, but that's what I'm saying, okay?
Understood. Thank you.
Absolutely. Commissioner, do you have anything to share?
Good evening, Commissioner Jackson. No, not at this moment. Like Lieutenant Hubbard, I've been kind of fighting off an illness myself, this nagging cough that just felt like it lasted for months, finally got rid of it, and then it just reappeared again. And so if I go off camera tonight, it's because I'm probably coughing and trying to get myself together. But I'm here and present. Good to see everyone.
Okay, thank you very much. And Kiana worked out some Wi-Fi kinks.
No,
So
I
we can
just
see her
decided
beautiful face,
to
okay?
risk it. I decided to risk it, and if you see me paused or frozen for a moment, just know that it's the Wi-Fi.
No, and if it pauses or freezes, please jump off, okay?
Okay.
Because I know that will make your connection a little stronger.
Mhm.
With respect to, does anybody have the minutes from before? I'm texting Chair Peterson. Okay, nobody does. Fine. Let me go back and find them now that I've sent that text message. Okay, so we now have the official policy review. Before, when IG went over it, she could not speak directly to it because it wasn't ready for full sharing. So we now have that one, and I believe that Kiana, did you send it? Oh, you didn't send it to everybody. So then I need to send it. That's fine.
Oh no, I did. I sent it to everyone. I
Did
believe it was
you?
just
You talking
BCC.
about, M19?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, we got it.
Oh, okay. Terrific. I was locked out of my commission email. I'm back inside, but I think you were very kindly sending it to me to my personal email. So
Ma'am,
I thank you very much.
no
All right.
problem.
And that in fact was the subject matter that Charlotte was supposed to speak to. Is that correct? Or was there something else?
Correct.
Okay. All righty. So, I am also looking at the fact that we have the post-learning domain workbook on cultural diversity and discrimination. This was also sent from the IG because we were talking about potentially reaching out to Post once we had our work complete to help them kind of update inside their training modules. some of the wonder that we're cooking up right now. So Lieutenant Hubbard, I know that you were working with the IG on some like glossary delineations. Would you care to speak to that? Or is it not ready for prime time? I don't want to catch you off guard.
Is this, let me just want to make sure we're talking about the same thing. Is this the glossary of different policies and how they're defined? So DGO, for example, Department General.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yes.
that, let me see if I can find that. I believe it was published, right, Kiana?
So we did publish an initial draft, and then we received additional feedback from Deputy Chief Wong. And so we sent it back to you all just to receive final confirmation before
Yeah.
we again publicize once more, and particularly put it on our website and go live on our socials again.
So
Just because we had
can
a
you,
clarification, we wanted to make sure it was in alignment.
can you, can you share it on our screen?
Absolutely. Give me one moment.
Yeah, well, you got all the time in the world. I can't find anything. I'm fumble fingers today.
Okay, no problem. One moment.
And want to really appreciate you, Ricardo, for managing the meeting because today is Micah's birthday. Micah's our chief of staff. Keeping us on track because I can't do both of those things. I'm good, but I'm not that good.
The notes for last minute meetings were for March 22nd, correct?
Yes,
No, the committee was March 21st. March 21st, all right.
I don't know what today is,
Yeah.
so I'm just saying yes, because I'm sure you're accurate. So we're gonna have Kiana share her screen. And Lieutenant Hubbard, I know that you are intimately involved with the completion of this document. So if you wouldn't mind taking us through narration, that would be wonderful, particularly for the people that are listening.
Sure. We often get caught in speaking in acronyms too much. So the OIG was kind enough to provide this easy to read, very beautiful document
Mhm.
that helps us understand what types of policies that we have. The first one is departmental general order, and we often refer to those as DGOs. And that policy, those policies, excuse me, are probably the biggest policies that we have, the most overarching policies. And usually whenever we have any spin-off training or spin-off policies, they're always going to refer back to some type of department general order.
Mhm.
Next is manual of rules, and that is a standalone document that enumerates all of our rules that govern what officers do. And whenever there's an internal affairs investigation or a complaint made, the first thing that they look at is which manual of rules violation is alleged, and that is what is investigated. Special orders are an addendum to the DGO. Just a brief history lesson. Special orders were really important when back in the day when we had typewriters and not computers. So we were unable to go in and quickly change policy. So they would write special orders, which would be a quick fix to sections within a departmental general order. We still use special orders today because they are still a quick way for us to amend a section of policy without having to open up the entire policy. But
Mhm.
that's what a special order is. And then finally, we have training bulletins, where they're still policy directives per se, but they're more specific and in depth to the type of training. So for example, what you would see, what we recently published is an internal affairs investigation manual, and that's in the form of a training bulletin. And it's really a top to bottom how to complete investigation.
Excellent. I see a hand and it's from Chair Peterson who has joined us. So Chair Peterson, would you like to ask your question or make your comment?
I was just going to say I joined and I apologize for being late. I'm out of town and I'm trying to still do my commission work. And I thank you, Ad hoc Chair Jackson, for continuing this special work.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So I thank you very much for the narrative distinction. When we first started talking about our work with the racial profiling ad hoc, we talked about the fact that there was no manual of rules to go with the departmental, DGO M19. Lieutenant Hubbard, do you know, are you aware, is there any special order, or I imagine there is a training bulletin that goes with this, but a particular policy doesn't necessarily have to have all 4 of these things, right?
That is correct. So likely for the policy we're speaking of, Department General Order M19, there's probably not going to be a training bulletin that's attached. And the other part to this is we have special orders that over the years have been attached to the 2008 policy. With the revision, it allows us to incorporate all those changes to remove special orders, which only confuses people because it's just additional things to look at, and we can finally consolidate it into one good policy.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Are there any questions about any of these particular indices? Like Lieutenant Hubbard said, you won't have all 4 all the time, although you could have maybe 3 or 4, right?
Indeed. And actually, I have a draft manual of rules edition subsequent to what we talked about. I'm ready to share it in some way, but
I think
yeah. So
I think that sounds amazing. You and your respiratory illness did not stop you from working, pushing through. And, you know, I want you to take care of yourself, but I love it when people work really hard.
Thank you.
Guilty as charged. So thank you very much, Kiana, for sharing that document. Lieutenant Hubbard, are you prepared to share yours?
Let me see
The
if
draft MOR?
yeah. Let's see here. Okay. Right. Everyone see that?
Yeah, I'm gonna, oh, very good. Thank you.
Okay, let me minimize here. So I already vetted this through IG Phillips. She likes that, and this is just a draft, but basically for those who are new here, we don't have a manual of rules section specific to racial profiling. So I created one, just a draft, titled Conduct Toward the Public / Racial Profiling. And right here, 31406 would be the code violation. And I'll read the definition. Members and employees shall engage with all individuals fairly and impartially. The department adheres unwaveringly to the highest standards of fairness and equality, treating all accusations of racial profiling, whether they concern race, ethnicity, religion, or national origin, with the utmost seriousness, ensuring that every case is meticulously investigated, reflecting our deep commitment to justice and equal respect to all individuals. Racial profiling, a discriminatory practice by law enforcement officials, is a serious offense. It involves targeting individuals for suspicion of crime based on their race, ethnicity, religion, or national origin, rather than on their behavior or reliable information pertaining to specific suspect's description. This practice is expressly forbidden as defined in DGO M19. as it undermines the trust between the community and law enforcement and contradicts the principles of equality and justice. Any member employee who engages in racial profiling or discriminatory behavior against another person or engages in any law enforcement conduct that constitutes racial profiling shall face disciplinary action. Furthermore, any member employee who knows that another member employee has engaged in racial profiling or conduct that violates the prohibition against racial profiling is responsible for reporting that conduct.
I'm talking to nobody because I'm on mute. Thank you. That sounds very thorough. The question that I have is, are most MORs just kind of straightforward? I wanted to think about where the appropriate placement for kind of an overview on the history of racial profiling would go. I presume probably M19, but just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, definitely M19. I actually have a draft of that. I did not include it in the response to IG Phillips, only because I know it's a working document and I know that all of you will certainly help with that. But I do have a pretty lengthy historical kind of what the historical discussion of racial profiling and why this policy is essential. I do have.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, nobody would believe that you had a respiratory illness. It sounds like you are, working at 3000%.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will look forward to reviewing that as well. And Chair Peterson, is your hand up newly or did it never go down? Chair Peterson?
Sorry, I was on mute.
That's-
My hand is newly up.
Okay.
When Officer Hubbard talked about any member who engages in racial profiling shall be disciplined, can that also say up to and including termination? Or is that one of the, or is that in the range of penalties for engaging in that conduct?
Yeah, thank you for that. It would come in the form of the discipline matrix, where we would have to then decide what that range is going to be. So it doesn't necessarily need to fit here because this is what investigators use just to determine if the allegations are within the context of this manual of rules violation, but the actual discipline range comes in the form of a different document that I think is part of our agenda to finalize with this ad hoc.
With this ad hoc, we'll talk about the range. Okay,
That's right.
very good. Thank
Yep.
you.
You're welcome.
Chair, it is my feeling, and of course, if nobody else wants to go there with me, then I'll be by myself. But I believe that we not only need to determine, what the course of discipline is for addition to the discipline matrix, but I then feel like we need to review, after we complete this, the discipline matrix, because it has not been updated since, I think, 2004. Is that accurate? Is it 2004 or 2014?
I think it's I remember Chief Went was here, so I think it's 2014.
2014. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. Still.
Okay,
some
I
years ago,
totally-
but-
I totally agree with that approach.
Yeah.
That
Okay, great. I
I
appreciate
just
that.
want to stick a pin in that to make sure
Yeah,
that we
so-
do address penalties.
Oh, no, absolutely. And what was missing inside M19 is this MOR. So since the work has been primarily done, are there any other questions or additions or edits that people want to consider adding into this particular document? Deacon Lyles, I see you thinking.
Yeah, I'm concerned about if we're just writing policy and we want to write good policy, but our ultimate goal is to have an organization that learns.
Mm,
and corrects itself based on past experiences.
Yep.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Lieutenant Hubbard. It was 2015, I believe, when we had Dr. Eberhardt, Oakland had Dr. Eberhardt come over and do a study. And in the study she did, she came out with a report that they did a review of almost 20,000 stops. And of the 20,000 stops, this is vehicular and pedestrian stops, 16,000 plus were on African Americans, and 3,000 plus were on whites, Asians, and Latinos. Now, if we're writing a policy, you guys probably know this better than I, shouldn't we reference that? I mean, we spent a lot of money for that study, and this is why we want to make sure we don't racially profile people, because we've been determined. Well, first of all, I probably should ask, does that make anyone feel uncomfortable, that statistic that I just quoted? That of the 20,000 reviewed stop cards, 16,000 plus, 16,300 were on African Americans alone. And at the time, they were less than 30% of Oakland's population.
Mhm. I totally agree that it is uncomfortable. I think that our challenge is that we could potentially add that into the kind of overview of M19 in terms of racial profiling. That gives some very specific data that speaks to the problem. What I don't think, based upon Lieutenant Hubbard's advice and counsel, is that it goes here.
I guess
You okay
it
with
has to
that,
go,
or-
it has to go somewhere. Otherwise, generations of officers will leave and they won't know why we're doing this.
No.
They will have no foundation. And it seems like the money that was spent on that very
Important study.
study
Yeah.
just goes
So-
unread and unnecessary.
So there is an overview of M19 that Lieutenant Hubbard suggested he had done some work on that we have yet to see, which is kind of the narration that sets up the history of racial profiling.
In
And
Oakland, not
in Oakland.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Yeah. So my suggestion is that because the manual of rules is usually pretty tight, speaking just to the issue, that kind of data or reference would not go here. It will go, and I don't know, are you prepared to share that one tonight too, Lieutenant Hubbard, or should that be the next meeting and you send it all out to all of us so we can have a chance to look at it and give feedback?
Yeah, it's definitely longer than what I wrote here. So if you don't mind, I like to let you have your eyes on it leading up to the next meeting. And to answer the previous comment and question, I 100% agree. And I think the training is going to be the essential element to this, and introducing, because a lot of the new officers don't know who Dr. Eberhardt is and what she did. And I think this is a great opportunity for us to reintroduce that and let that be part of the curriculum even 10 years from now. So I think the training is the most important part to this.
I'll push back and say the supervision is the most important part. Okay.
Yeah, no, you're right. I got you. But
It's a both and.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes good sense. So as we are looking at this document, are there any suggestions or edits that people want to make? I personally feel very strongly when Lieutenant Hubbard and IG agree, because she is extremely detailed, and then Lieutenant Hubbard is very detailed in his work as well. But I want to make sure that we don't miss an opportunity to add if we think something needs to be added.
And I'll send this out also just as a separate document. And again, every time I open this up, I seem to change something. Be the same. So we can, I'll send it out, and by the next meeting, if you have any more edits, I won't be offended.
Yeah, no, I think that will be great. We can sit with it for a minute and then hopefully by the next meeting, we can finalize this. So if there are no more questions, let's see. Kiana, I can't see everybody's face. Do you think, oh, Charlotte is here. So welcome, Charlotte. Charlotte, would you
evening, good
introduce
evening.
yourself, please?
Hi,
And
I'm Charlotte Jones. I'm the Chief of Audits and Evaluations for the Office of the Inspector General, and I so sincerely apologize. 580 was terrible, terrible. So I tried to get here as soon as possible, so forgive me for that. I
thank
will
you.
definitely catch up on what I've missed so far with the recording later,
That
okay?
sounds great. We're gonna put you in the hot seat right now. Because I know that since our last meeting, excuse me, let me check in with everybody. Is everybody okay with us moving on to the next thing? Recognizing that the draft memorandum of rules is going to be emailed to us so that it can be one of the first things that we potentially finalize during our next meeting. Okay, thumbs up from Deacon Lyles. Ricardo, you good? Okay, all right. And excellent work, Lieutenant Hubbard. So that's what we will do there. Now, Charlotte, your presence is, as I understand it, primarily here to provide a little bit more of an overview than what we had from the IG, because at the time she couldn't speak to the policy because it had not been fully published. So now that it's fully published and everybody has received it, I think that it might be nice that they hear, from a different voice, what the importance of the review was and any recommendations that came out of that review, which have probably been delineated, but you can underscore so that we can begin to think about that. The other thing that you missed was that Lieutenant Hubbard had started a kind of a narrative on the racial profiling policy, M19, because what I wanted to do was provide an overview of the historical reasons that a racial profiling policy needs to be in place in the first place. He has started it. Excuse me, Lieutenant Hubbard has started it. We have not seen it, but we will all get a copy of it so that we can review it and be prepared to move forward at the next meeting. Is that clear enough, or do you have any questions for me?
No, that's clear enough. I understand that. I'm trying to pull up the policy right now so that I can speak to the recommendation specifically. And I'm sorry, again,
I can share my screen, Charlotte. If
thank you, Kiana.
no problem. Are you all seeing my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
And it's
Okay.
such a beautiful template, beautiful overview.
It is. She's done great work on that, like really with the communications and making sure that it's readable for everyone and understandable. Just go down to the first recommendation for me, Kiana. Thank you. As you can see, the OIG reviewed the policy. Actually, Joe, our policy analyst, did a significant review, a lot of documentation, a lot of academic writings, comparing it to a lot of other policies from other areas along the western parts of the United States, to see if there were any language that needed to be changed, anything that was missing that could be clarified, something that would allow the policy to speak better for OPD and for the community. He had actually about 13 or 14 recommendations that we kind of whittled down to be more digestible for everyone. Basically, it was just to make sure that the policy was more legible, in that it agreed with the penal code, code 13519.4, that the language was more address the gender and identity profiling issues, as well as defined color specifically, just certain categories as are listed in the recommendations. Also to ensure that there were certain timelines that and that the DGO aligned itself consistently throughout the policy. There was certain language that was different, and so just to make sure that it was consistent throughout. So I think that we whittled it down to the 6 just for clarity's sake. There was also the 2 considerations, the 3 considerations that were suggested for changes that might also make it clear regarding the purpose of the policy, maybe making the language, including language on the background history of Oakland to make it more understandable, and to have a specific DGO that included the policies regarding the special orders 9042 and 9101. And could you scroll down a little bit for me, Kiana, or up a little bit? Thank you. And to clarify, they still have language that refers to the Office of the Inspector General as it related to the department, as opposed to changing language to make it regarding the Office of Internal Accountability, and information about the racial profiling program manager, that I don't think that they have a person in that position. I think our understanding is that a lot of those duties are assigned to the deputy chief. So just recommendations and considerations to make the language a lot more clear, a lot more understandable, so that officers can clearly understand what's required of them and be held accountable when necessary.
Thank you very much for that overview. I want to make sure that I am understanding what you said. The first thing you said was that I'm sorry, Kiana, can you go to back to page 1? Thank you. Is that you wanted to make the policy more legible? Is that what I understood?
To make it more clear, I want it to more aligned with the penal code that they indicate, the California Penal Code 13519, just to make it more consistent and clear.
Okay, thank you. Because when you said legible, I thought, well, was there a poor font back then or something like that?
No,
okay.
If I said legible, excuse me. No, I meant just to make it clarified with the penal code that they're addressing. And just to make the language more in line with what we consider when we consider racial profiling and bias-based policing, making sure that they indicate the language that is used in other areas.
Okay, thank you. And then I'm looking at consideration number 2. I'm not sure that we have reviewed special orders 9042 or 9101 as it relates to approaching M19. Wondering if you can send that to us, or Lieutenant Hubbard, if it's easier for you to send, to the extent that we might glean some additional information that will help to inform the updates to M19. I want to make sure we don't miss anything.
I think we attached them, if I'm not mistaken, Kiana, to this report.
They are attached to this document.
This report.
Oh, okay, perfect. Clearly, I've been locked out of my email and just got back in. So no problem. Thank you for that. I want to ask if anybody has any questions about the recommendations that were just reviewed. And sorry, I deleted the looking at everybody's face because I was trying to see the whole document. I don't see any hands raised. Lieutenant Hubbard, I don't assume that you agree with these recommendations. I know that you have probably reviewed them. Do you have any thoughts, additions, or questions around these?
No, we agree with all of them, and my response is also in that attachment. You'll see it written there, and including the considerations. That's an easy add, so not a problem at all.
Okay, perfect. Deacon Lyles, you're good? You're on mute.
Yeah, you kind of were going pretty fast back and forth. I was getting a little dizzy there.
Uh-oh, sorry about that.
So,
Have you had a chance to review this, Deacon? Because if you haven't, you know, we can definitely.
I just want to focus in quickly, scan these recommendations if you got a moment here.
Yeah, no problem.
Sure, color
Let's take a few minutes. Kiana, would you mind reading the recommendations, or Charlotte, again, for the public who cannot access this shared screen?
I will if you want me to. You do it, Kiana?
Go ahead, Charlotte, because I know Kiana's trying to take notes and I don't want to give her too many things.
You're right, absolutely. Okay, so recommendation number 1, we're requesting that OPD confirm DGO M19's language is consistent with California Penal Code section 13519.4. As they already utilized the language in the policy, just to make sure that the language changes that were made in the penal code are also made in the policy itself. Recommendation number 2 is that they insert color, gender identity, or expression, as well as mental or physical disabilities as protected categories, characteristics or categories, I'm sorry, which is also language that is included in the penal code. So just to make it consistent with the penal code as it relates to that. There was no glossary that defined each protected category or characteristic. We thought that that would be important so that there's no guessing what everything means. And just for clarity's sake. Recommendation number 4 was that they set clear timelines, reporting incidents of profiling with accountability measures in place for missed deadlines. So the deadlines, I think, were, if I'm not mistaken, I don't want to guess, but it was really discretionary, I'll just say that, or as soon as possible, or some language that was more general. And we felt like that clear timeline should be set for those. Recommendation number 5 is to clarify the timeline for supervisory audits as required by section 11 under supervisory responsibilities. I also believe that there was some discretion there, and we're indicating that, you know, clarifying the timeline for that. Recommendation number 6 was to verify that all DGO M19 requirements align with current OPD operating procedures, and that language is a little inconsistent. We saw along the lines, and I think we gave a couple of examples. Some of them are just menial, just you need to change the language to make them all consistent and agree with each other. So that was the basis of the recommendations. They are mainly regarding clarifications in timelines. As far as considerations, there were 3. Consideration number 1 was suggesting that OPD outlines the desired outcomes of a DGO M19 in section 1 purpose. The purpose was, I would say, more broad, and we indicate that maybe specifying the desired outcomes or making it a little bit more clear, considering some information from the background of Oakland particularly would maybe be helpful in that purpose. Consideration number 2, requesting that, suggesting that they establish a specific report writing DGO or other policy document that includes other special orders 9042 and 9101. Parts of those are included in this policy, and they're about mainly report writing and other factors that we think might be better if they're separate, so that they don't make M19 any cloudier, and that M19 can focus specifically on bias-based policing and or racial profiling. And finally, consideration number 3 is to review and equitably distribute the roles of the Office of Internal Accountability, which is still listed in parts as OPD's Office of the Inspector General, and their Racial Profiling Program Manager, respectively. So to distribute those roles, because I don't believe they have anyone in that position, and those duties are actually assigned to other people. And so we're asking or suggesting that they consider clarifying those roles.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. To clarify, Lieutenant Hubbard, is there currently a racial profiling program manager, or as the IG's office, both Charlotte and Michelle have stated, maybe those have been distributed to other people and no one person holds that responsibility?
It was held by Deputy Chief Lindsay before her leave, and it has not been given to anyone else. So to that point, it needs to be specific to a position, not a person, so this policy can last many years. So
Okay.
that something I need to talk to the chief about who should be delegated that responsibility.
Okay, that will be excellent. And now that it's been reviewed, wonder, Deacon, if you have any questions or edits.
Yeah, I have, I'm uncomfortable can we go back to 4 and 5? Okay, set clear timelines, reporting incidents of profiling with accountability measures. Okay, that's a broad statement, accountability measures. What does that mean? I know what it's meant practically in the past in regards to, the Oakland Police Department. Based on the Eberhardt study, it meant that no accountability. That's why we're here.
Right.
And so if we keep doing this thing the same way and expect different results, because this is how we do things.
Definition of crazy,
And
right?
we're crazy. We're not making a change. Now, I don't want us to have an exercise in writing, great linguistic policy, great paragraphs and great statements. How do we make people actually do what we want them to do? How do you make people understand that this is why we're doing this, whatever. And if you don't do it, this is the consequence. These are the potential consequences. If they're not there, then they don't exist. What does exist? Pattern and practice, cultural behavior, what we've always done. Now, it was speculated. It was a speculation for decades that Oakland Police Department racially profiled, primarily African Americans. That was a theory. That was a guess. Many of us thought it was absolute. Yes, they do. Okay. And but then we had a study and it actually proved it. And it didn't prove it slightly, it proved it overwhelmingly.
Correct.
20,000 stops were reviewed. A MacArthur Fellow from Stanford, did the research and wrote this and said over 16,000 were on African Americans alone. So, and we don't even talk about, we say supervise accountability measures. Does that mean discipline? Does that mean supervisory accountability? I don't know. It's very vague. And if we keep writing vague, we'll get vague behavior.
Correct.
Now,
the purpose of reviewing these recommendations is to ensure that we address these things when we start looking at the M19 policy review, which we will do.
Then not to cut you off, then I want the word discipline in there.
Okay.
I want the word with accountability and discipline measure.
Okay.
I mean, if we don't start talking about that, then you're not disciplining me. And we know that some of the people in the history who have been brought up for disciplinary measures, and they were investigated, and then punishment was meted out. Then they go back around to the labor board, and they say, "Hey, we weren't trained on this. No one mentioned this," and they get the job back.
Right.
We got case after case after case after case after case of that happening, where people who have done some egregious acts or, got their jobs back pay, everything. Why? Because they said, well, no one trained us on it. So we have to change that. We have to start somewhere. In racial profiling, when we have this, I don't think you can question the study. or unless Lieutenant Hubbard can tell me something different. I'm suspecting the kind of racial profiling that Jennifer Everhart and her team discovered is still going on.
Sure.
I haven't heard anything different.
That's a good point. Chair, I see your hand, but I'm gonna let Lieutenant Hubbard respond to Deacon Lyles's question.
Sure. Yeah, I know the great points, and these are just recommendations, and that's where all this is going to be vetted out in the policy, certainly. But yeah, and I agree where the lack of training is an issue, and that's what I hope this ad hoc together we can fix. And I hope for a very robust, meaningful training after we're done with this.
Okay,
Yeah.
again, I want training and supervision.
Yeah.
Training won't get it. We've done training. Everybody in Oakland is post-trained and qualified. That's not where the problem is. The
But
problem
we
is-
will,
the
we
problem
will
is
also,
training and discipline. So I'm saying right here at the ground level, we got to put discipline in this document.
Yes.
At the first step, we got to say we want to see supervision, and failure to abide by these policies will result in up into including terminations. Some kind of language that speaks to discipline and penalization if you do not comply with the law, the Constitution, or our general orders.
I think that is an incredibly impactful statement. I think that we will probably also need to review the training so that we can make any additional commentary there as well. Lieutenant Hubbard, is that would be the assumption of the next step, that we touch on all the important pieces connected to racial profiling.
Indeed, and it makes another great point just about supervision. There needs to be, I think, a separate class just on that alone. And I like to, we have a contract still with Dr. Everhart and teaching us what to look for and how to be a supervisor and commander for these types of events. I think that's essential.
Okay, and then I was going to talk about recommendation 5. That was my thunder. I was going to say for recommendation, clarified timeline for supervisor audit. It should be audits, training, and discipline, right? Because we got supervisors who were in training and said some of the, has done in, some gross things, how to police and how to do bias policing and not get caught in that kind of thing. We've got evidence of that published, documented, and with names attached, who did that in the supervisory training. So it can't just be audits. It got to be audits, training of sergeants and supervisors, and discipline.
Kiana, do you have your hand up because you want him to repeat something, or do you have a question?
No, well, not a question, just I think, and Lieutenant Hubbard, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it would be advantageous to kind of facilitate this conversation through the lens of OPD's official response, simply because they did provide a comprehensive at least acknowledgement of these recommendations. And then also this would provide the commissioners understanding of, how they plan to proceed. And
Great point.
Okay, so
Okay,
I'm going
great
to
point. So if you can pull that up, then we'll ask the chair what her question or recommendation or thought process is.
Okay, so one of my first comments in this ad hoc meeting was in fact something that Deacon Lyles just mentioned, and that to put in here, violations will be
Discipline.
Up to and including whatever. And I'm hoping we always, for these serious kind of violations like racial profiling, or
Mm.
I even think body worn camera. I dwell on that because if you don't say that, if you don't cross reference, Deacon Miles is right. They'll
Mhm.
say, well, I did my behavior on a Tuesday, and it didn't say I couldn't do it on a Tuesday.
Right.
So I I can't be held accountable
Mhm.
because this language is intentionally, no offense, Lieutenant Hubbard, written vaguely so that when it comes to the Skelly hearing, we will see the union run a Mack truck through our disciplinary decision. And this whole notion of everything can be addressed through additional training is
Right.
also a fallacy. So I think at this moment, this is our moment to write into the policies the strongest language that puts the member on notice. This is a new day. We can't keep doing it the same way and expecting a different result. So
Yes.
write the strongest language we can. That's my point.
Yes, thank
I'm
you.
off.
Thank you very much. So I'm not sure if everybody's had a chance to see the police department's response to the recommendations. Can we scroll down so we can see recommendation 1 and move forward? There we go. So Lieutenant Hubbard, do you want to read this, or you want me to read it? What do you want to do?
Sure, I'll read it. And just, again, this is, a, it is a generic, simple response, but I think, you know, the most important part is what we do with this, which would be the policy, and that's what we're all working on together. So I know it appears to be very brief, and it's just more acknowledging that we have no issue with any of the recommendations and we plan to move forward.
Mhm.
That was my intent with writing this, but I could certainly redo it to include more detail if that's what desired. But anyway, for recommendation number 1, we will review and revise the language in M19 to ensure full consistency with the penal code, focusing on explicit prohibitions against racial or identity profiling. This will involve collaboration with legal counsel to update all references and ensure they reflect current legal standards.
Okay, and recommendation number 2.
There's 3 phases of this. We will amend M19 to include color as a protective characteristic, acknowledging the nuanced differences between race and color and their impacts on policing. We will also replace gender with the gender identity or expression in M19, extending protections to encompass all gender identities and expressions. And then finally, we will specify mental or physical disability to ensure comprehensive protection against bias-based policing practices.
Thank you.
Recommendation 3, we agree on the glossary. That should actually be in all our policies, defining each protected category and characteristic mentioned in M19. The glossary will be included in the order and used in the training materials to ensure a common understanding amongst all personnel and also the public, I should add. For 4, we will establish specific timelines for reporting profiling incidents. To that point, there's actually a reference to that in another policy, which is DGO M9 or M3, which is our discipline policy. So because racial profiling is considered misconduct, there is already a timeline in place for when and how we report that to internal affairs. But we will make sure those 2 things are linked up, incorporating accountability measures for adherence. This will be documented in M19 to include in the training sessions, ensure that all members know of these requirements. Recommendation 5, we will define a clear regular schedule for supervisory audits to ensure compliance with M19 and remove the ambiguity of quote periodic audits. The schedule will be communicated and trained to all supervisors and commanders. And then finally, for 6, we will comprehensively review M19 and current operating procedures to identify and rectify discrepancies or outdated practices. This will also involve consultation with members to ensure practicality and effectiveness.
Thank you. Members, do you mean police officers or? Who are members?
Yeah, I should say stakeholders, because there's a lot of stakeholders to include the CPRA, the IMT need to review this because it's an NSA policy, council, and of course the police commission. Yeah.
Okay, that's very helpful. And then what's going to happen, and I'm going to call on you, Chair, in just a moment, is that these recommendations are going to be some of what goes into the updating of the actual policy. So for example, by the next time that we meet and review that policy, I would expect that perhaps the comprehensive glossary will already be, some draft language, and where it might be inserted should be like in red or something. Some of the language that they're asking for, we can help with it, but obviously would like to hear what your approach would be, not tonight, but the next meeting, so that we can then, I don't want to say tear it apart, but make sure that it responds in the way in which we go from police-ese or police language to regular stakeholders, so everybody can kind of understand it. Same thing with the timelines for the supervisorial audits and the current operating procedures. And then maybe some of this language will then be revisited in some of the training or some form or fashion when we look at the training as well. Is that a reasonable expectation, Lieutenant Hubbard?
I think that is very reasonable, and I think maybe just take it to the next level. I can take these 6 recommendations and also the suggestions that were made and just bookmark them within the policy, so you can see which sections they would actually be applicable, and then we could start building from there.
Yes. Okay, that sounds great. Deacon Lyles?
Yeah, again, I'll say if the word discipline is not in here in any of these recommendations, it's not gonna register.
Mm-hmm.
It's status quo. And so I don't know if I'm talking to deaf ears.
No, you're not. We're
we
gonna
gotta
handle
do
this.
We gotta do a 90-degree change.
Yes.
And it's gotta start at the ground level. So my expectation of Lieutenant Hubbard is to say, yeah, I'm gonna put discipline in there. Yeah, I want to train the supervisors and I want them disciplined if they're not held accountable, if they're looking the other way and allowing somebody or encouraging somebody to racially profile.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we're trying to get to. I mean, writing great policy is a job half done.
No, I totally hear what you're saying. And I think Lieutenant Hubbard hears what you're saying. Lieutenant Hubbard, do you hear what he's saying?
I hear him and I agree. So I
Okay.
can promise you that in the policy that will be outlined.
Say it after me.
Discipline. Say it again.
Discipline. Yes.
Everybody on the call, say discipline. Discipline. I really try not trying to make fun of this. It's just very, very clear that, it's kind of like I keep talking about whether or not there might need to be some self-insured police officers as a part of the next iteration of, potential discipline, so that the city is not on the hook for, all damages. That's a whole nother conversation. But the point to Deacon Lyles is, if people fear discipline, and you're right, maybe they will adjust their behavior, but they've also got to see it in the policy, in the training, in the MOR, everywhere. So it's not, and Risa says yes to self-insurance. That will change behavior.
Let's say you got 600 officers.
Mm-hmm.
90% of your force, all they need is a policy. Most officers I've met, all they needed was a policy.
Correct.
All they needed was some training and a policy, and that was it. You never had to worry about discipline with them.
Yep.
But it was that 10%.
That's it.
So that's 60 officers.
Yep.
And that's 60 officers that, hey, man, if I can get away with it, I'm getting away with it.
Yep.
And they do exist. And so we write policy not only for those who could read and adhere, but you write policy for that problem individual also.
Correct, correct. I totally understand. And as it relates to our work, you know, we're gonna get in it really deep at the next meeting. But I just wanted to make sure that we were able not only to see the recommendations for the IG who has already reviewed the policy and identified some gaps, but also giving the police department, specifically through their representative, Lieutenant Hubbard, to try and find all the spaces where these recommendations should go. And then we can have the conversation at the next meeting about, you know, did he go far enough? Do we need to do more? And recognizing that we won't speak specifically to discipline in this space, but that will be those recommendations that we make for the discipline matrix as it relates to racial profiling. And that, I think, depending upon how far we get with our updates at the next meeting, may come at the meeting following that. I am not an expert on this, but I'm trying to kind of follow the logic. Does anybody have another comment or edit to what we're doing? Kiana, your hand is up, your finger is up.
Yeah, no, not a comment in terms of the actual responses to the recommendations, but I feel like if the Inspector General was here, she would also note that OPD in their response did go above and beyond just addressing the recommendations. And I did want to point out this section and note that they plan to develop a cultural accountability. Oh, goodness. I don't want to do that.
How about you read that implementation and oversight piece for us?
Yeah. So implementation oversight, the Bureau of Risk Management, in conjunction with the training division and other relevant stakeholders, will oversee the implementation of these recommendations. This will include developing a cultural accountability statement in the policy, creating new training modules, updating existing procedures, and establishing a monitoring mechanisms to ensure compliance with and effectiveness of the changes. Regular reports will be provided to the Office of the Inspector General to maintain transparency and accountability. And so I didn't want to just gloss over those points because I think that is a great supplement to the recommendations that have been offered by our
Oh, no,
office.
thank you very much, Kiana. And I am very pleased. I don't know what regular reports mean. Is that monthly or quarterly? But I would imagine that, Charlotte, do you have a thought on what the IG meant about regular?
Oh, I wrote.
Well, that's information from OPD, so.
Yeah, I wrote
I'm
that.
sorry.
Yeah,
Who wrote that?
I don't know what that means, but that would be the new policy, whatever we agree upon. But
Okay.
regular, yeah.
Okay, well, it'll be helpful, you know, just like the glossary, right? For us to be able to spell out when we get to that point at the next meeting, what regular means. So it would be preferred for you to promote what you think is regular, so then we can discuss whether we all think it's, you know, it means whatever you think it means. Is that, okay, great. So as it relates to this, and I want to just underscore Kiana's message that she thought the IG would handle. I know that the IG has worked with you a lot, Lieutenant Hubbard, and she has had nothing but excellent things to say about the quality of your work. Obviously, I have known that from years earlier. And so definitely want to give you, you know, your flowers, so to speak. And I'm really glad that we're working with you to overhaul this long overdue and primary reason that, you know, the police oversight is here, is really to ensure accountability within the oversight space because of those people Deacon Lyles referenced, kind of like the 10%. Because we do recognize that there are a lot of good police officers that follow policy and that would follow policy if we had a more clear one. We just want to ensure that there are no Mack trucks that you can run through this one because this one kind of touches everything. Are there any thoughts, edits, comments? Not edits. I know that Kiana is taking copious notes so that some of the information that has been shared tonight can go straight into some of this language that Lieutenant Hubbard will, kind of highlight in the spaces. Now, Lieutenant Hubbard, our next meeting, tonight is the 2nd, so our next meeting will be April 14th. Do you think that you will be able to get that updated version to us in advance of that meeting?
Certainly. Again, we'll,
Okay, I love that. All right, thank you. So then what we will all be challenged to do is review his draft overview of the, introduction of racial profiling policy, the language around the MOR, and the policy as is laid out, where he's going to bookmark spaces that he thinks are the appropriate places to make those improvements. Now, it's our responsibility to review all this documentation because Lieutenant Hubbard's really, really good, but he's not perfect. There may be an area that he overlooks for whatever reason, or there may be more language that we want to add that goes a little further than what Lieutenant Hubbard has listed. Ricardo, I see you getting very interested. Do you have a thought?
Do if I can find my mute button. No, I just wanted to echo, just gratitude to Lieutenant Hubbard and OIG, just, for putting on, moving this forward. Everything seems pretty straightforward in terms of process. So just in agreement and looking forward to moving this along.
Okay, that's wonderful. Anybody else on the screen have a comment? Okay, I don't see any hands up. And then we may end a little bit early, which would be okay, unless you all want to talk about something else. I feel like it's important for us to have the information that we're requesting, to digest it, and then come ready to, smack it down. Because I don't believe that this work is going to take us 6 months. I don't believe it's going to take us 3. But a lot of that has to do with the fact that the IG and Lieutenant Hubbard are, when between the time that we are here and moving to the next meeting, they're doing work to help ready us for that next step. And there's a question, is the next meeting really April 14th? That's a Sunday. Then that would not be the answer. So Regina should have added 2 plus 14 to make it 16, except for the 16th would need to be a Wednesday. Let's see here.
We're looking at the 17th, Commissioner.
Are we looking at the 17th? Okay. Wow. All righty. So, thank you for challenging me. And let's get the date of the next meeting in the chat, and for everybody to book it so that we can come here ready to go. Any final comments? Thank you, Risa. I really appreciate your comments on the sidelines, and we will get to that conversation around self-insurance. I'm not sure if it belongs in this space or another one, but we will have that conversation. Any parting thoughts? Committee? Okay, well, I'm just going to thank you on behalf of everyone. I think we're moving very expeditiously, and again, a lot of thanks to Lieutenant Hubbard and IG Phillips for working betwixt and between our meetings. Want to thank our special guests, Kiana Gums and Charlotte Jones, for pinch hitting for IG Phillips. Very important information that you were able to share and explain. So, I don't have a problem with beating a deadline versus meeting it. So if we're all good, Lieutenant Hubbard and Commissioner Acosta, you all work on making sure that you get better. Okay? Because this weather out here is no joke, and it keeps going from cold to hot and all of that.
And
So-
RSV is serious.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And for the public that has been listening, thank you for continuing to follow this. Appreciate your suggestions, but do not miss April 17th. It's going down.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Take
Thank you so
care.
much. Have a good one. Bye-bye.